In this episode, we are talking to a banking and finance veteran. He has an amazing professional journey of over 4 decades, of which more than half has been with World Bank Group. He has established financial institutions in several countries, including Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Pakistan. He is a member of multiple international platforms of fintech and global development and served as a board of director for several international companies. Today, he is here with us to share his insightful views on MSMEs, development banking, and fintech. So let's welcome Kaiser Naseem. Hi, Kaiser. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm also fine. What about this COVID-19 thing? How are you coping this whole scenario?
Well, look, everyone is in it, and it's for the fourth, we're into actually the fifth month now.
Mhm.
And I'm actually at this point in time in Dubai.
Mhm.
So we've been locked in. It's more than 10 weeks, I would say now. I remember March 8th, I had gone to an event which was International Women's Day, actually.
Mhm.
That was my last time I ventured out. And then I've been at home. We're
Yeah.
coping as best as we can. Surprisingly, everyone has, they've coped differently. But surprisingly, I don't know, given the nature of my work, perhaps, that
Mhm.
I've sort of quite easily gone into this work from home mode.
Mhm.
And digital, that's what we've
Yeah.
been doing in the last 5, 6 years. So e-commerce or banking or whatever.
Right.
So, I've eased into this situation, but it's obviously not a good situation to be in from the point of view of the economy generally around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
True.
probably will talk more about that as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
For now, yeah, it's stay at home. I'm not really venturing to go out. They ease the restrictions a bit in Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
but still, it's wait and see because I think, like I also mentioned in one of my articles, I don't know if you have read them, but basically, this opening up or easing of restrictions are based more on economic reasons than on health or safety reasons. I think each one of us has to make their own, use their own judgment.
Yeah. 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 Right. So, Kesa, you have dedicated almost most of your life to banking and finance. You have a 4 decades of experience, and I think you're still going on. So, I would really like to talk about your professional journey. When did you realize that you really want to do something in finance, and how this whole professional journey of yours carved up? How did you get into World Bank, and then afterwards? So, how does it all?
Okay, so good question. It carved out because when I was an engineer, I don't think you got that much. I actually
Yeah,
graduated.
yeah.
I had a master's in metallurgical
Hmm.
engineering. Uh, a very interesting place, which
So
is
it's a
called the
big
Soviet
shift
Union.
from metallurgy to
Yeah.
finance.
Yeah. So I worked in that field for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I was a good engineer, by the way. We did a lot of good work. And this was with the steel mills in Pakistan, in Karachi. After, graduating, it was a 7-year program, bachelor's and then a master's.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we worked for 5 years. But somehow I had always wanted to work in a field which had to do with the economy, which had to do with finance. I think a major reason for that was my father was an economist. He worked for the
Oh,
United Nations for many years, and my
mm,
brother was a banker. He's been in
right.
different banks. So probably watching them, the way they dressed up and went to work, as against a metallurgical engineer, by the way. It's not
Right.
just an engineer. And I was a real engineer, so I had like grease on my face and I had these overalls, and I remember that. But it wasn't because of those reasons. I just wanted to get into an area where I could work in finance, economics, and mostly in the development part of finance. And I
Mm.
got my opportunity. So I started my career in 79, so
So,
long time ago.
yeah,
And I
long ago.
got this opportunity to go for an MBA after my
Hmm.
engineering. And this is the early 80s when MBA was very rare,
Yeah, it
and
was very rare thing.
getting an MBA and combination of MBA and engineering was a big deal in those days. So
Hmm.
anyway, I got off. I went for an MBA. I got my MBA. And before I could come back, went on leave from the steel mill. By the way.
Hmm.
Before I could rejoin, I had an offer by, at that time, that was the largest development finance institution in Pakistan. That's where I started my career.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was the National Development Finance Corporation. This is now 1984. So having worked about 4 or 5 years as an engineer, and now equipped with an engineering degree and an MBA, I was offered a job with this big financial institution.
Right.
It was actually responsible for a lot of industrial development that has happened in Pakistan. I don't know if you're familiar with these development finance institutions. There used to be a lot of them in the late, actually even the whole of 70s, before
Yeah.
my time, whole of 80s and the whole of 90s. And their objective or their goal was to develop the industrial sector, the services sector in Pakistan. And they used to channel all this aid that we used to get, this financial assistance from the likes of the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank. So it was rooted through development finance institutions, and I was part of that. A lot of these cement companies and textiles and sugar mills, which are controversial these days, had got lines of credit or financial assistance from development finance institutions. And a lot of this industrialization happened because of these development finance institutions. There were several of them. The largest was NDFC, but there were a few others as well. But again, I mean, we get into a different story that they weren't run properly. So, as long as they lasted, they were doing a good job. But for the longer run, they sort of were not able to sustain because of familiar words in Pakistan. Unfortunately, people at your age still have to listen to it. Corruption, mismanagement,
Yeah.
government interference, that continues. So these institutions are no longer there anymore. And hence, our industrial development, again, we'll get into a different topic, but the pace of industrial development in Pakistan after these DFIs, development finance institutions, were finished off, was slow. It was very slow. So we've not seen great projects come in over the last decade. I mean, since probably you've been, on the scene professionally. So that's where I started my banking and finance career. And again, I keep emphasizing it's development finance. So it's a little different corporate bank, although it encompasses all this because we work with other banks.
Yeah.
And when you're in a development finance institution in any country, so when you're looking at your career growth and your career path, your career path leads you to multilateral development institutions out of Pakistan, a bigger scale. You have Asian Development Bank, you have the Islamic Development Bank, you have the African Development Bank, and on top of this, you have the World Bank. So professionals who work in these, their aspiration or their goal, if they were looking at career progression, is to get into one of these institutions. That was how I got into one of these institutions. It's not easy. It's very competitive. You've got to bear time. So it's not you apply and you get in. But over a period of time, if you persevere. And actually, that opened up a lot of opportunities in terms of the contributions one could make to have an impact on the economic development of countries globally. I was lucky to start my journey at this international level in a region which was just emerging. It was actually the Central Asian region, and the Soviet Union, if you remember, had broken up in the early 90s. So I started this journey in 92, the Bank Group journey. And 15 countries suddenly became members of the World Bank in 92. And they spoke a language which no one knew, which was Russian. I spoke Russian, by the way. One of the reasons I got also in is because, language, so many things help you in your career. Things sometimes you think are not going to help you. And you, like Russian language, once I graduated, I didn't speak it for a decade. No one spoke it around the world, in the 90s. No one spoke Russian, they spoke English. Russian was very rare because, I don't know if you know the history, the Soviet Union was a closed, it was a closed country. And here I knew a language, Russian, no one spoke. And suddenly, it was in great demand in 92. So I started working in this region, which was totally barren in terms of their integration with the world economy. So that is what I built over a period of time. I was in school, and then of course in many other countries in the world. But the first commercial bank, for example, in Central Asia, the first leasing company in Central Asia, the first bank in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. I was part of all this. I was instrumental in establishing them, and this actually gives you, this sense of fulfillment, if you may, that you
Mm-hmm.
have contributed. Even today, when I go back to these countries, I still work on these countries.
Yeah.
And the people who I worked with in the 90s, obviously, some of them, the ministers and all who were older, have retired, but they still remember them. When I walk into, let's say, a bank, and I say, oh, this bank I used to work with, I was on the board also. So the guy actually goes back and looks at the minutes of 93, 94, 95
Yeah.
years. Yes, you contributed to the board. So this is what this is how I got into this field.
Yeah.
It's an interesting field. And the first institutions we built in countries which are emerging, like the ones I just mentioned, are financial institutions.
Yes.
So financial institutions are the conduit which then channel financing and other services
Mm.
to the right sector of the economy for growth.
Right. Right.
That's the view.
Yeah.
I just
So
stop here. I mean, there's a lot more, but
yeah, that's really an inspirational journey. I have also going through your profile and I just find it out that you have worked in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and you have worked towards establishing a financial institution, which is a very, very integral part of thing. So you have experience working with micro, small, and medium enterprises, and you were also part of development of one of the SME banks in Pakistan as well. I would really like to talk about something about these micro, small, and medium enterprises because somehow when I was working in NGOs, in different NGOs in Pakistan, I just realized that they are actually the backbone of our economy, of Pakistan's major economy. And but due to lack of investment, guidance, and proper training, they are lacking behind. And then when I come to UK, I realize, and I have seen the same things as well over here. So what exactly we should do to develop this sector, because this sector contributes sufficiently enough into the economies across the globe. So what is your take on that?
look, I mean, you've rightly pointed out backbone of the economy.
Yeah.
2 decades ago, we used to call the engine of economic growth. I mean, these were the buzzwords. And
Mm. Yeah.
these SMEs, micro, small, medium enterprises have always been in all the countries of the world.
Yeah.
But the focus on them actually started about, I would say, 20 years ago, two
Mm-hmm.
decades ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, the real impetus to that focus started perhaps 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When, and 15 years ago, or yeah, about 15 years ago, when we had this 2008 economic crisis. I'll tell you the reason for that. But before that, I would also like to state and say, and especially to youngsters like yourself, and I think a lot of our audience would be,
Mm-hmm.
that they should now understand that these small businesses are, I mean, we in our age discovered
Mm-hmm.
along the way that wow, okay, the small business seem to be contributing a lot. So now it's a fact. So don't try to learn this. It is there. It's a fact. So just know it is something you,
Mm-hmm.
as young people, when you embark on your various journeys,
Mm-hmm.
professional or entrepreneurship or whatever, you should have this in mind that it is the small businesses which you will help set up as entrepreneurs, which are going to run the business.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the focus 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was because of the way these big corporations, and talk about that also a little later. So there's a lot that has been done, by the way. So once this was focused, and it's happened more in times of crisis. So I
Yeah.
can tell you, one of the major reasons these small, medium, and but SMEs, let's call them MSMEs is what I call them, if
Mm-hmm.
you can
Yeah.
micro
Yeah.
as well, did not were not able to grow is because of their lack of accessibility to banking and financial services.
Yeah.
Because for growth of business, it's business, right? You need capital, financing, you need a lot of advisory services, which you mentioned rightly. We talk about that also. But these companies did not have access to those till 2008 happened. And I witnessed to that because, we in the World Bank group are targeted, our objective is poverty alleviation, right? We want an employment generation. And
Yeah.
the way we strategize that that could be done was through helping small businesses. Because small businesses cater to employment, they generate employment. So across the board, all countries of the world, anywhere between 60 to 90% of employment is generated by SMEs, and
Mm-hmm.
anywhere between 30 to again 75, 80% of GDP is
Mm-hmm.
contributed by these. So the best way to add value to an economy is to focus on these small businesses. They generate employment, they give people employment, people work, they add value to your raw materials, they add value to services, and contribute to GDP. We've always focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we focused on it, and because SMEs, there are millions of SMEs around the world, right? I think just in Pakistan there's equal to a million SMEs.
Yeah.
So you can't target each one of them. So then you leverage institutions. So then we get into leveraging, which is an important lesson also for young people, for everyone to learn that on your own you cannot make an impact. You can make an impact, a smaller impact. So for a bigger impact, you need to leverage other institutions, other individuals. So at the World Bank Group, we leverage financial institutions to reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
Financial institution means big banks, big leasing companies, investment banks. And when you knock at their door in 2005, in 2006, in 2007, they really weren't bothered with this sector at all because they had these big corporates who they could lend $100 million, $50 million, and they had done their KPIs in 5 or 10
Yeah.
projects. They
True.
weren't bothered. So that was the mindset. And
Mm.
we come to that also. How
Mm.
do you change the mindset?
Yeah.
Come 2008, and I've witnessed it. The reason I say that is because we were promoting banks to build a capability to lend to SMEs, to expand their reach to the SME sector. Banks were not interested.
Okay.
After the financial crisis, it was the other way around. I remember very clearly, I was based in Cairo at that time in the Middle
Okay.
East.
Mm-hmm.
I started getting calls from banks who we had visited. And they said, look, you had come and, spoken about SMEs 6 months ago or a year ago, depending on which bank. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and you said that that's a lucrative, a sector where banks can have additional revenue. We're interested now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they were interested is because these big companies had dried up. This
Yeah.
project finance, corporate had dried up. And
Yeah.
also a lot of other things that happened, the margins had decreased because a lot of funds had come up, which were also targeting the same projects. So
Mm-hmm.
banks really didn't have the opportunity or the same deal flow in the large. So they said, let's explore.
Mm-hmm.
Between 2008 and the decade that followed, we worked with a lot of banks, including in Pakistan. I would name them now. I think almost all the big banks we work with
Mm-hmm.
create a capability to provide financial services and banking services to
Mm-hmm.
SMEs. A lot of these banks are not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Now the gap is coming back to the advisory services, and we'll bring that into the COVID-19 also.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's creeping into this part, and it's because of what we didn't do that we are now in this fix. But what we didn't do, some banks did, is I don't know if I said it to you or said it in another call earlier this morning.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest thing to do or the easiest thing to address a problem is to throw money at it. It's very easy, especially if you have the money. If you have taxpayers' money, the government of
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan, for example, has taxpayers'
Right.
money, they can throw it at a problem. World Bank does that. The IMF does it actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just countries, all countries of the world, because that's what they know how to do, what to do, and it's the easiest thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the KPIs of financial institutions, more or less, they're changing now. But earlier, it was how much have you been able to disperse? How
Mm-hmm.
much has this guy from IMF been able to negotiate with Pakistan? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
he's giving them $5 billion, so that was the target. The guy is happy. But the thing is, and I've been propagating this or advocating this for many, many years now because I've been a development banker, is
Yeah.
that for us as development bankers, we also need to ensure that this money that we've thrown at an SME, since we just talked
Mm-hmm.
about SME,
Mm-hmm.
government holds true for corporates, is being used by them properly.
Oh,
And
right.
not not only being used, but do they have the ability to use it properly?
Ability to
So
use it.
large corporations probably have the ability also, but perhaps they don't want to. And then they go and buy
Mm-hmm.
the first thing. I also worked in the monitoring department of this
Mm-hmm.
institution in Pakistan. First thing we used to go and when we gave a loan to a cement company, for example, is the big office. You enter there, this is a curious office, there are these big cars. So that's where your loan goes in the first instance, not on equipment and machinery. So that, but
Yeah.
in case of SMEs, they actually don't even know where to use that money.
Yeah.
Or
True.
how, so you need to give them advisory services.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically that is still an issue. There
Mm-hmm.
have been a lot of efforts. So in Pakistan, since we're not just focusing on Pakistan, but since you belong to Pakistan and I belong to Pakistan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we set up an institution called the SME Development Authority. I was on
Yeah.
their board when it was first set up back in early 2000 and late 90s. And
Mm-hmm.
that was exactly their purpose. I myself was instrumental in setting up the first SME bank. I
Yeah.
set that up in 2000 and ran it as the first president and CEO in 2003. Unfortunately, it was in the government sector. I tried to, I also got some investors. So to privatize it, that was the objective. Actually. That's why I had come. I was on leave from the World Bank Group actually to set it up. But that didn't happen. The government said, no, no, we'll keep it. It's a government thing. So I actually left. And the institution, as we all know, didn't really go far from there. But things were being put in place to provide advisory services and to provide financial services and help
Mm-hmm.
SMEs. But unfortunately, it did not happen. I mean, the way this could have been done or should have been done did not happen.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes, the money actually didn't even reach the SMEs. Sometimes the right type of advisory services were not available.
Mm-hmm.
What is needed going forward? Forget this is all history. Even today now, but before I come to that, to today, what is needed for SMEs to make sure that they're able to develop is they need to be provided both financial and banking services. It's not just money, it's both financial and banking services, and their ability to use that, capacity to use that in the way their plant is laid out, if it's a manufacturing, in the way they use their capital, is it for working capital, is it for startup capital, is it for employee salaries, and the way they actually are able to plan their cash flow. So they need to get some training on managing their accounts, managing their staff, their HR. All this comes in.
Yeah.
Before that, let me tell you a story which was one of my favorites. There's a lot of responsibility in this government. And
Yeah.
my favorite story when I was setting up the SME bank, and we used to go out and articulate why. What I'm doing today, we articulated in 2000 why SMEs are important. What part of the economy do they control or they have
Mm-hmm.
generate employment for? These were things happening in 2000. If you go back and read the newspapers, it was all about SMEs and SMEs and SMEs, why they're important and what needs to be done. So the government's responsibility was that, let's say, and this is my favorite example because it's for all audiences globally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
FIFA football, as we all know now, is made in Pakistan, in Siam.
Yeah.
And the value chain of that is, it's not just this one big sports company, but there are hundreds of women who work in their little homes, in their little rooms in their
Yes.
homes, actually
Yes.
stitching the football, cutting the leather, and I visited all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the manufacturers are happy with doing. I'm just giving you an example. One football a day. The reason
Mm-hmm.
they're happy is because they have a family of four. They get $10 a day by making one football. They're happy. They're not interested in doing more, and their kids
Mm-hmm.
are going to school. So the government needs to tell them that, look, you have the skills. Why don't you make four footballs? And the
Yeah.
reason the government is interested is because
Mm-hmm.
the government can export four footballs instead of
Mm-hmm.
one and get
Mm-hmm.
more revenue foreign exchange. What
Yes.
we are always, short of in Pakistan is foreign exchange. So
Yeah.
exports. So these guys have the skills. No one sitting in the government has the skill to make a football. The
Right.
guy is happy with making one. So someone has to go and tell him,
Someone has to
hey,
tell them.
can you make two footballs? Because
Yeah.
we in the government Pakistan want to get not $10, but $20 of revenue. So
Yes.
these things have to happen. But I don't know if they're happening or not. But these type of interventions, if you may,
Mm-hmm.
in the SB sector. Again, we need to recognize these are the entrepreneurs. They have the skills. They're making the surgical instruments. They're making the
Mm-hmm.
chemicals. They're making the footballs. They're making
Right.
the hockey sticks. So they have the skills. How
Mm-hmm.
do we encourage them to be more productive?
Yeah.
Is our objective, especially if they're adding 50% to your GDP.
Especially.
So these things are lacking. So they're
Right.
being built up. I mean, I think they still need to be fine-tuned. They're much better than they were 10 years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
here we are. But
Yeah.
if you allow me, I mean, I'm sure you have that question, but let me just relate it now to COVID. That
Right.
because of this lack of infrastructure, we
Mm-hmm.
all know now
Mm-hmm.
that globally, governments and central banks have allocated I think it goes into trillions of dollars globally
Yeah.
of money as relief packages to small businesses.
To small
Part
business.
of that is small businesses of all
Mm-hmm.
businesses. I mean, like the US is $250 billion
Yeah.
for small
Mm-hmm.
businesses. I think here it's $7 billion or 17 billion in the
Mm-hmm.
UAE. So this money, again, the easy part, that you have this money. They've done it through various ways. They've actually given cash. They've actually asked banks to lower the reserve requirements, so they have more
Mm-hmm.
cushion now available to go and lend out. So all this has, so this money is available. The sad part is that no one looked at, will the SMEs be able to use this money?
Use this money.
That
True.
means I've been saying this for more than a month now, and now
Mm.
it is happening. It's
Yeah.
happening not in emerging markets, it's happening in the US, that more than, I think, almost all of the smaller small businesses have not been able to access that money in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And the same in the UAE and same in a lot of countries. And the reason for that is because they have no idea how they can access. No one has told them.
Yes. Yes.
Again, like a favorite example of mine that, this is real example. Banks have said, look, you came in, you told us to, develop an SME department. We train people, we have good processes now.
Mm-hmm.
We're willing to lend to SMEs, but no SMEs are coming.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
said, have you told them that you're available? Have you told them? Have you told them? They said, no. Just this big bank who never
Yeah.
spoke to the, till
Yeah.
a year ago is now happy to lend to them. So you've got
Yeah.
to tell them. So all these relief packages are available. And I know that because a lot of SMEs have been reaching out on LinkedIn, on my phone, on email, that do you know what package is available in Malaysia, for example, in Iraq, for
Even
example,
in
in
UK, small businesses doesn't know that where
they don't
is the
know.
$3 trillion is being kept and how they can access it. They are all going mad about it.
So the reason for that is twofold. I mean, again, we're in the age of technology, so keep that at the back of your
Mm-hmm.
mind. Yet we're having this problem. So all these relief packages, this money, have been, the conduits for them are the banks.
Yeah.
The banks historically have this legacy of being unable to reach out to the smaller of the small. They're just not able to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of countries, the KPI is that a lot of banks have said, we've already dished out 80% of this money. They're very happy.
Mm-hmm.
But now none of the small businesses have got it. It's the bigger small businesses, the SMEs, the M, the higher M, even not the M, but the higher M who got it. And because that's easy fruit, they already have perhaps a banking relationship with the bank knows them, so it's easy for them. But the ones who are suffering are the startups, are the scale-ups, are the smaller
Yes.
businesses, the
Yes.
restaurants. So that's one. The other is the small business does not know which of these packages do they need. So do they
Yes.
need to go and ask for relief to pay their employees? Do
Mm-hmm.
they need to go and ask for money for working capital? Do they
Mm-hmm.
need to go and ask for money so they can pay their rent? Do they
Mm-hmm.
need to go to the bank and say, can you roll over our debt? So what do they need? So for that, someone has to advise them. And something I've been doing actually is,
Mm-hmm.
first thing, look at the cash flow.
Right.
Is there a receivable that has to come to you? Is
Mm-hmm.
there a export order or local order that you were supposed to manufacture and you're not able to deliver because you don't
Mm-hmm.
have the money? Is there a chance that your revenues are going to dry up from this source? Can you pivot and start something else? Like a lot of these chemical small businesses, these supply chain, those small businesses who are in the supply chain of the likes of Nestle or Procter and Gamble. So they pivoted from making uh, just soap to making hand sanitizer, for example. Any company which had something with an alcohol, you have to pivot, but someone has to tell them.
Someone has to tell.
Garments,
Yeah.
garment factories have pivoted into making masks, for example. They
Yeah.
need money for them. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what is happening, unfortunately, in this. We're still in that loop. And I spoke about technology that we now have this platform that banks can easily leverage to quickly reach out to SMEs. Why don't banks reach out to them? It's because they do not have the ability to assess it. They're scared that this
Mm-hmm.
small business, we have no information. We have all the
Yeah.
information now from various data sources, but the banks are not using it. You
Mm-hmm.
have this platform. So in the US, I mean, because that's a big country, unfortunately, I don't know, the leadership is lacking. But SBA, the banks did not reach out to us these platforms. platforms have only now started coming when the banks were unable to reach out to SMEs. They started also on a small scale, but they have to work in tandem. These platforms don't have the number of clients which the banks have, and the banks don't have the data which the platform have, the ability to analyze the data. They have to work in tandem. So this has to happen. If
Yeah.
the COVID relief packages also have to be dispersed the right type of SMEs at the right time. It's already too late, in my opinion, but
Yeah.
it's the,
That's a very comprehensive answer, Kaiser. I just really like it that the way you have explained it. This comes to a very important question that I have in mind. We in Pakistan are struggling with our startup culture, actually. So if we compare ourselves from India, India is so much far ahead than us. They have already got their unicorns, and they are not unicorns are not all, operating in India only. They are also operating worldwide as well. But there are some very important issues that comes with our startup, and one of them is just that you have pointed out is they do not know how to use the money they are getting, and plus in the first place they do not know how to ask for the investment and even how much to ask. This is a very very critical issue because I have been working with startups for about like 2 years in Pakistan, and they all are very nice kids. They are confident also, but they are very much specific to their skills only. They have no clue about how to do money, how to do money management, or how to ask for money. So do you have any advice or any top tips for these startups, that how to ask for investment, how to validate their startup, and how to have their valuation done?
look, let me just start by saying that the startup culture in Pakistan is not lacking because we don't have the entrepreneurial spirit, or we don't have
True.
enough good ideas. I think we have plenty of those.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we then come back to the ecosystem
Hmm.
and to our image on a global stage.
Yeah.
I do a lot of mentoring as well, like you mentioned, you do it for a lot of startups.
Hmm.
My focus is obviously on the financial sector, so fintechs,
Hmm.
a lot of fintechs. But by default, I also get into edtech and health tech sometimes, but mostly on fintechs. And I've been to numerous conferences globally, and I've always said it to Pakistani, those who I mentor or those who run incubators, that I've not really run across a Pakistani fintech. I've attended fintech across the globe.
Yeah.
And your neighbor, I mean, we always like to talk about India, but yeah, they have a lot of them. From
Yeah.
all over the world here,
They are
small
all over
country,
the world. True.
Kenya, Kyrgyzstan, I mean, a small country of 6 million people. But Pakistan, I've not seen. I think it's an image issue. We probably now getting over with. And we have very bright minds because I interact with a lot of entrepreneurs over there. And then we have unicorns in Silicon Valley, right? I don't know if you were at this big conference. I attended it in Islamabad in October, I think last year. And we had these five companies out of Silicon Valley, all Pakistani,
Hmm.
all of them unicorns. Surprising that in Pakistan we were able to build that. Now, having said all that, now you do have these incubators. You have the NIC, you have other incubators coming
Hmm.
up,
Hmm.
in Pakistan for these youngsters to get advice.
Hmm.
My take on that is that policies, number one, I mean, this encouragement on a national scale in
Hmm.
terms of, youth coming right out of university. Again, like I said, there are a lot of incubators, so a lot of them are being incubating. But in terms of funding, in terms of being able to attract an investor from outside, so that is a Pakistan-specific image issue. The same
Okay.
the same person sitting in Silicon Oasis is from Pakistan,
Hmm.
would be able to attract funding, right, for that same type of project. But in Pakistan, you're not able to do that. So I think
Hmm.
that's one thing which has to be overcome. And I think now we have people in place from what I've been reading who
Hmm.
are supposed to be working in the ecosystem. So my advice actually is to, the young entrepreneurs, a lot of them speak to me as well with their ideas, is to continue exploring. I mean, they've got to reach out. A lot of them do reach out, by the way. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's again an image of Pakistan. And I think that's the first thing which needs to be broken. That
Right.
if you're a tech company out of Pakistan, although it's a big market, it's a market of what, 220 million.
Mm-hmm.
So the scale that you can get in e-commerce, for example, and that's why I think you have the likes of Alibaba already jumping in there,
Mm-hmm.
and you have forgetting the names. I mean, these companies which have investments coming in from Germany, but they're far few and far between. We need more. We've got a lot of talent. I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen these youngsters coming up. So my advice is to put their head down and continue doing what they are, and reach out to international investors. Reach out. Maybe this right now is obviously not the right time,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Again, but keep these liaisons with with these big funds. We have a few now in Pakistan itself, and you know, uh, stay focused on what it is. But just make sure, because unlike 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that you had very few of these innovations coming up and these
Mm-hmm.
startups coming up. Now you have a lot in payments. You have many especially in payments. So
Mm-hmm.
focus on an area which are pain points, and there are a lot of these areas in the financial sector, for example. Like I belong
Mm-hmm.
financial sector, so I can speak to that more. Uh, so, so fintechs, for example, how do you onboard a client? How do you make sure that your risk assessment is
Mm-hmm.
appropriate? So these type of fintechs are required right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Focus on that more than payments or remittances. I don't think that would be. There's a lot of competition in that.
Mm-hmm.
So just try and look at the ecosystem, what is happening. Going forward, we can see that there's going to be a lot of e-commerce.
Yeah.
We have the likes of Alibaba, I think, who've already entered Pakistan. But, on a smaller scale, these are areas, deliveries, for example. Again, it's part of e-commerce as it
Mm-hmm.
will happen. There's going to be less of air travel. There's going to be more
Mm-hmm.
platforms like the one we're using right now, Zoom or others for remote meetings. So,
Mm-hmm.
focus on what is needed, uh, and I think that would be the ones that needs to be scaled up. The ecosystem is still developing in
Yeah.
Pakistan, obviously, and we hope that with these new initiatives the government supposedly is taking, I mean, it's obviously taking longer than it should. I mean, these are things that should have been done. You have to develop the ecosystem. You can't just have a startup and you don't have the supportive ecosystem in place. So it has to be holistic in that
Yeah.
respect. So that has to be built up. So my advice is, for these young entrepreneurs who are building, in platforms or want to get into e-commerce, want to get into fintechs, want to get into health tech, that first of all, learning that this should never stop. We should continue to
Yeah.
learn. Try and reach out to as many of these global funds. Again, maybe not the right time, but when these things start happening up, and it's easy to do now. I mean, online, you can reach out to them. I remember these five platforms which had come out for this conference in Islamabad in October are out of Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then we should reach out to Pakistani diaspora and see how they can help them to scale. And then secondly, they don't really need to stick. Although Pakistani is a 220 million market, but they don't have to stick to Pakistan. Scale
Mm-hmm.
these in the Gulf area if they have the right proposition in terms of the right idea. E-commerce is going to be
Yeah.
taking off because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
shopping is going to be done online. And I don't think the way we're locked in right now is going to end anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Although I see in some countries, in Pakistan, as an example, where people are still out on the roads, but you have to be cautious. I mean, you have-
Uh,
so
you have mentioned fintechs, so you have a lot experience in that, and you also sit on the boards and a lot of associations into fintechs. I really want to ask that what is the future of fintech, given that financial inclusion is still pretty much low when you talk about when you talk about the global level, and there are some countries who have some really rigid policies, like one of them is Pakistan as well, and there is also an issue of security and privacy. So given all these things, where do you see fintechs, and what fintechs are doing right now? And as you are based in Dubai, I have started listening from people that, you know, Dubai is going to be a blockchain economy, completely becoming a blockchain economy in next 2 years or 5 years. So how do you see that?
Look, first of all, I think the future is going to be on technology,
Mm-hmm.
based on technology.
Mm-hmm.
And even the fact, what I like to say is this medium that we're using right now.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people were comfortable with using a Zoom or another platform for holding a meeting?
Yeah.
They weren't. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so suddenly everyone has become comfortable. So I think going
Mm-hmm.
forward, technology has to be leveraged, and we'll see more and more of this happening. The one good thing is, I mean, if I can say that of this, what we're going through right now, is the fact that people have become very comfortable with technology for
Mm-hmm.
shopping, for all their meetings, for conducting their work. So
Yeah.
I think going forward, we now have this ecosystem that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our the way we work is going to be based on using technology. So look, so technology obviously is the future, and you spoke about specifically about fintechs. So getting funding and financing to businesses there are various ways of doing it. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of steps that banks go through
Mm-hmm.
so that they can reach out and lend to businesses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The way it's been done does not allow inclusive financing, meaning that you cannot go deep into the small, micro, medium enterprise sector because of lack of data with these banks. That was the reason that banks excluded us. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Technology enables financial institutions to reach out deeper into the market and reach out
Yeah.
to essence of the SME.
Right.
Although a lot of banks didn't do it because there are cultural reasons, not that the technology is not available. There are historical reasons that banks have still not. Today also we have 1.7 billion people still excluded, right? You know that.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
used to be 2.5 billion, and because of technology, every year
Yes.
you're getting 0.300. Then it was, I think last time it was 550 million. Now 1.7 or 1.5 billion people are still excluded. They also need to be included, and technology is the only way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different aspects of technology. The one we started off with was remittances, the payments. And that was because of the fact that you had a lot of these expat workers in different countries in the world, right?
Right.
Where I'm sitting, or the GCC in general. A lot of people from our part of the world started
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
work here and they send money back home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much easier to do that. This is the first type of fintechs that one saw. But for everyone to be included in the financial sector, go deeper and also see how can we get funding across to smaller businesses within the
Mm-hmm.
country,
Mm-hmm.
within the continent.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, you need to develop different types of fintechs. So not just dispersing money, but assessing risk. For example, being able to identify individuals remotely, because that's very important when you're dealing with finances. That you need to make
Mm-hmm.
sure this is the person he says he is or she
Right.
is. That so biometric face recognition, all that. So these technologies are evolving.
Mm-hmm.
You asked about blockchain. So obviously, I mean, blockchain is an evolving technology, by the way. So
Yeah.
it's not a technology which is applied in test cases so far, but it's not being applied commercially anyway. I mean,
Okay.
read about it. It's not on a large scale, it is still developing. The beauty about blockchain is that it minimizes the risks because there are a lot of points which put a check on whether the person who is we're talking about banking here, so is getting, or let's say trade, is getting the goods, is getting the funding, is the person who he or she claims to be, because it's being checked by multiple nodes. It's not, one. So that's what the blockchain is about. It's still expensive right now, and you cannot have a wider. It's not. I mean, you can't reach out to a wider clientele at this stage in time. It's too expensive.
Okay.
But it is developing. It is the technology of the future. In terms of when we talk about banking, using blockchain banking. Uh, so yeah, I mean, look, technology is the future. Forget, fintech, even e-commerce right now. I'm sure you're sitting in London right now, and people in Pakistan are doing a lot of shopping online.
Yeah.
That's picked up, so there are sectors which are picked up, there are sectors which have lost a lot of money, like taxis and restaurants, for example.
Yeah.
This is a sector e-commerce has picked up.
Uh-huh.
A lot of food delivery to delivery of ink for your printers, for example. You go out and shop it and get it delivered. E-commerce is going to pick up. Anything to do with technology, actually, because technology enables efficiency. Technology enables you to assess a lot of risks, if you may, which you are not able to do manually. And when you talk about banking, that's basically why these big banks have not reached out, because they are not able to assess the risk of smaller businesses. So, and this will happen. I mean, now banks, a lot of them, even in Pakistan, even in Dubai, across the board, are using platforms to assess risk and be able to quickly deliver to small and medium enterprises. Yet they're not there yet. I mean, again, like I said, these relief packages which have been announced, 80% has been dispersed to media.
Right.
They don't have any clue of how they can assess the risk. And on the part of small businesses, I mean, a lot of small businesses don't have a banking relationship. So they're not even in the radar of the banks. The banks know this. And it is, I think, the responsibility of those who are these financial institutions are the drivers of economic growth. I mean, that's what I like to call them, because they are the ones who provide the funding, financing. Even today, we probably thought they would disappear. Like Bill Gates, I think, said it 5-6 years ago that banking is necessary, banks are not. But today, banks are still necessary because they have the reach and clientele.
Yeah.
But they need to better assess risk so that they can reach out to this still 1.7 billion people who are unbanked. So these banks or fintechs. Since we're on the topic of fintechs, the other thing we need to also realize is that fintechs on their own, and this is historical. I don't know if you remember, there used to be fintech one, so this is not that far, 7 years ago, and then we are now fintech two. So fintech one, and that's when Bill Gates said that banking is necessary. It was thought that these emerging fintechs in 2015 and 16 will grow to a level that banks will become obsolete.
Yeah.
But apparently that didn't happen, and it didn't happen because of several reasons, two of which are the outreach of these platforms.
Outreach, yeah.
So these banks had millions of clients, right? Country like Pakistan, if you look at HPL, 15,000 branches, UBL, 15,000 branches, and millions of clients. So they couldn't reach out to that number of clients, number one, so they didn't have that. And number two, the type of projects, they were, mono products. So we couldn't go and offer a working capital loan and a project finance loan and a line of credit. They just had mono product. So then came FinTech 2, where fintechs and banks work together. And this also evolved from banks, because initially banks had their own development centers, developing their own technologies, while fintechs were developing on their own. So I think around 2017, banks like BBVA and this bank out of Singapore, DBS from Singapore, they had their own developments.
They have.
They started leveraging fintechs. They have presence in the market. Why-based money creating innovation there? So now FinTech 2 is partnerships. So a lot of these fintechs are partnering with banks and giving them solutions. So you have a payment fintech partnering with a bank, you have a lending fintech partnering with a bank, you have a fintech which is good in doing KYC, know your customer. But you build your technology work in a bank by partnering with fintech. So this is starting happening right now.
Yeah.
Fintechs will be relevant, and the upside for fintechs is that they get the scale because the banks have the clients. Now, banks have not really stepped up as they should have in many jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Very few jurisdictions, banks have stepped up in terms of across the board. They have systems in place where digitally they can onboard and serve clients. They do it in bits and pieces. And a lot of these bits and pieces are the front end, which is customer facing. So you see a lot of apps. You probably see an app of a bank, and people are happy. Look, my bank has an app. You can log in, and what can you do when you log in? Well, you can transfer money with your own account. You can check your balance, but there's a lot of things you have to because the back
a lot
end.
of things.
Banks are now partnering with fintechs to onboard clients, for example, to assess the risk of lending to S, for example, the S or the SME, more than that, because of data. Data platform. You now have a platform, where several fintechs can offer their services to a bank. You've heard of you're in the UK right now, so open banking, you've heard of that BSD2, which allows banks to reach out to fintechs to use their platform of banks and get banking services for their clients. Or open banking actually. Open banking platforms. So this probably will happen in Pakistan. It's not there yet. So look, these things are evolving, but what I am saying is that especially in this lockdown, this has expedited the process of people, banks, mindsets who were afraid of using e-meetings like we're doing right now, or using a fintech, or using a platform bank. They still want. Now we've been catapulted into that era where you have to bank online, you have to go and deal with the bank online. This is evolving. So this we've been catapulted into the digital era because of this. If you look at one of the bright sides, there's not many bright sides of the problem we're in right now. But yeah, these things will evolve, and specifically in Pakistan, I think it is still evolving. I would not say that we have a bank today in Pakistan which is totally digital. Maybe the front end is you can send money or check your balance using an app on your iPhone. But there are a lot of things you cannot do. You cannot open an account. You can't be a non-client of the bank, and then you want to be a client as a business. These type of things should be happening remotely as well. So on and so forth.
Right. There are so many things happening, but there's so many things that are not happening. So the policies have been very, very rigid. The newer policy which the newer government has applied in Pakistan, it has make startups to to exchange money from other countries very hard. So now what people are doing, what the small businesses are doing, that they have their own bank accounts in some other country so that they could have this international transaction done, because it's getting very, very critical day by day in Pakistan. So true. There are so many things happening, but there's so many things that needed to be happen in terms of finance and technology specifically. I would move on to my second last question to you, and that is all about this pandemic thing that we're facing. We all know what is happening during this, and we all have been talking about that, how to cope it and how to cope it. But the most stressful and worrying thing is the post COVID-19. When everything goes back to normal or back to as our old days, and now countries are moving in. For example, UK is slightly opening and easing up the lockdown and everything. What do you see what the future has to offer post COVID-19, given the fact that a lot of people have lose their jobs? Student like me who are studying right now this year are very much confused and they do not know what to do in their career because they do not see any future right now. So what do you suggest? What is your advice on that? What are your views on that?
Look, it's a difficult question to answer, frankly speaking.
Yeah.
I think the
Mm.
answer is no one really knows.
Yeah.
What is going on. This is really unprecedented. We all know
Yeah.
that. We've been through crisis. We've been
Mm-hmm.
through financial crisis. We've been through crisis in particular regions
Mm-hmm.
in the world. We've been through crisis of climate change.
Mm.
This is not a country or a region specific. This is global.
It's global. Yeah.
It's a crisis which no one even has a handle on. It is evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
my own judgment on this, my take on this is that it's going to be a longer haul than most people would like it to be, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for the simple reason that things are not disappearing. I mean, like a lot of these lockdowns, like you mentioned, being eased, but they're being eased because of pressure. It's not
Yeah.
being eased because it's safer to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, one of the best countries which did the best measurement is where I'm sitting right now in
Mm-hmm.
UAE. Actually. And, they locked down completely maybe almost 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right thing to do because this can spread anytime from anyone,
Yeah.
not from anyone, just from the air. But
Yeah.
no one really knew at first. They said if you touch something,
Yeah.
eat something, it's an evolving thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's better to be cautious. Even here, they have eased up. And the
Mm-hmm.
easing up is because of economic reasons and perhaps also because of pressures from, I mean, a lot of us, maybe not a lot of us, a very small percentage of us
Yeah.
don't really feel this lockdown as the way as a majority of them. But,
Yes, majority of them.
we
True.
have perhaps bigger homes to be in. Some of us even have a garden to walk on.
Right.
There are billions of people around the world who are cooped up. And you've seen images on TV
Yeah.
in one bedroom, two bedrooms, and
Mm-hmm.
also talk about social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
No social distancing.
Yes.
They're
Right.
ready to get on. So a lot of this ease has come up, even in Dubai, where I am, and many
Mm-hmm.
countries are looking at it because of these pressures.
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan, I don't know, I mean, it was never really that much lockdown,
Yeah.
which is I see. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's done something good. God is kind.
Yeah.
It's not really galloping like it does in other countries. So this is going to be a long haul in terms of our social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
Being hooked up in our houses. And luckily that we have technology. So you don't really feel it because you can order food, you can order supplies, you can actually have you can watch a ballet, watch theater if you want to on
Yeah.
live ballet right now. You can tour
Yeah.
the world on your laptop.
Uh-huh.
So my going forward, look, I think best thing would have been if we learned lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Globalization, of course, let's talk about that also. I mean, how do you see the economy coming back? Everyone is now inward looking. So this big thing about globalization. Unfortunately, I don't think it
Yeah.
will come back soon. A lot of it is going to be fear. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to import sugar from Pakistan anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get wheat from Uzbekistan because
Mm-hmm.
inward looking. So which is a problem also because no single country has a bit on economics of being able to leverage another country's sugar production, other country's wheat production, exporting our milk, whatever. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how these supply chains are going to be very difficult to restore.
Yeah.
And the US, the first country to succeed, right? In
Yeah.
their own corner. One,
Yeah.
a lot of countries, travel is restricted. So a lot of these restrictions, the growth will have to come from within. How
Yeah.
that can be managed, so that's going to be a big change.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of social distancing, the fact that you're not able to travel for a long time. Also, airlines are also opening. And this again, I can tell you, is opening because of economic reasons, not safety.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are taking it.
Mm-hmm.
Flights coming back to Pakistan, from this part of the world, from the US, from Canada. These are risky things.
Yeah.
I should do them. You should be doing it. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this will go online. Work from home, e-commerce,
Mm-hmm.
this is starting. people need to be. That's why I say we've been catapulted into this era, which was taking us a long time to
Right.
get into, which is this digital era, online era. People were shy, people were reluctant, people were scared.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone has been catapulted into it, and a lot of people have discovered, doesn't be easy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I should mention that also when I go into boardrooms. We've done a lot of work. I mean, this is a little side. I
Uh,
just noticed my white hair, so nothing about it. I've been into boardrooms, as part of my work when I
yeah, it's part of your.
working with these large banks,
Hmm.
digitalization, not in different areas, about digitalization. And these boards, a lot of people are not, they don't get it, and you get this resistance, yeah, but our bank, and this is not just Pakistan, I work with all the countries of the world.
Hmm.
Our bank has been in operation, I don't think we need to change at this. Frankly, we aren't able to do it, sitting in the board. So now, at least for the last 2 years, maybe even three, my question to the board is, I said, okay, how old are you? And inevitably, at least in the last 3 years, I'm the oldest person in that boardroom of a bank.
Okay.
I turned 60 about 3 years ago, and most of the
Uh,
bankers, even when the board level was senior at 58. I said, I'm the oldest person.
hmm.
I'm telling you, you should leverage technology.
Yes.
So not a question of age at all. It's a question of an understanding.
Yeah.
And you need to get out of the fear. My next question actually is, how many of you in the board are using an iPhone or a Samsung? Everyone. Why are you saying you're illiterate? You're
Yeah.
using one of the highest technologies,
Yes.
and you're probably not. So it's scare factor. Now, all of these have been catapulted
Mm-hmm.
because of this into that age. All these guys who were in that boardroom are now sitting behind a Zoom conference at home and talking to probably they never used. In
Yeah.
countries like Libya,
Right.
Tunisia, Morocco, or Yemen, uh, Saudi, or where I
Mm-hmm.
worked, or Uzbekistan, or
Mm-hmm.
Estonia.
Mm-hmm.
People are now using this for meeting, and those very people who said technology, and how do they get this banking services and sitting from home? They have to use
Yes.
it. So
Right.
that's been the good part of it.
Hmm.
But yet, because we've not included everyone, so because of the fact that these banks are now responsible for dispersing a lot of these billions and billions dollars of packages to SMEs, they're not reaching out to everyone because they didn't
Yeah.
build that
They are
capacity.
not. Mm.
But then now they've started leveraging. So I think you
Mm.
read the US at least they've reached out to Revolut and other platforms uh, for them to for the banks to leverage to reach out to the SMEs.
Yeah.
We should do similar things in this part of the world also.
Mm.
So yeah, so you're just coming back to your question. So look, it's very difficult. I think for a long time
Mm-hmm.
we will be working from home, at least a vast majority of us. We'll
Yeah.
be
True.
using media like the one we're using right now.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
need to be comfortable in how we use this. I think the rebuilding of economies
Mm-hmm.
will be slowly and steady. Well, even right now, I mean, a lot of economies, this curve is still not flattened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And flattening a curve doesn't also need much. I mean, it just sounds good, it's flattened. It
Yeah.
shouldn't remain flattened for a long time, which we see
For
it
a
is
long
remaining
time. Yeah.
flattened. So it should be starting to go down. And then again, there will be a lot of individual people will exert a lot of caution that you will not really go out when you need to,
Mm.
not travel if you don't really need to travel. Then how does that affect airlines? How does that affect
The whole tourism industry is at the edge right now. So already, I think the cruise ship industry has just said that we are not going to be in operational for some years, I guess, due to
they're
that
actually in
incident.
negative territory.
Yeah. So, whole tourism industry is fully, I think it's compromised, and there are so many jobs being provided in the tourism industry. So yeah, it is a very critical moment. I'll just close this interview with this last question. And this question is close to my heart because I usually work in gender studies a lot. So I work in, gender empowerment and opportunities towards gender and whatever the gender discriminations. You have been working in development sector, specifically in the finance part of it, for so many years. What have you seen in terms of women and financial inclusion, because women are very, very far behind than men in terms of financial inclusion. And there is some particular specific discrimination against women when it comes to investment and loans and other activities. What is your take on it? What have you experienced in your entire career? And if there could be a change, what change could we bring? And are things have changed in this present scenario, or they are still continuing like that?
Okay, good question. It's good because it's a subject that is close to my heart. By the way, I don't know if you were able to assess that information I sent you. But, and I worked a lot in this area. And as part of being a global development bank also, this is a very crucial area for an institution like the World Bank to work in. Because as you rightly said, and it's not only in developing countries, but even in
In the developed countries, the same, yeah.
Nation, in all areas, but since we're talking about financial inclusion and banking and finance services, even in this area, they are discriminated against in terms of the type of financing and funding that is available to women. We work a lot in that area, and I specifically have been involved in building capabilities or capacities within financial institutions. If you talk about Pakistan, so Happy Bank is an institution I personally work with, creating women, sensitizing the bank to including women in their financial and banking services. And they've done very good over the last 4 or 5 years since we worked with them.
I have
with
also
BSC
seen
Bank, BSC in Lebanon, and a bank in Yemen, and a bank in Pakistan. So we work with a lot of banks. I personally have. So it's, look, women everywhere in the world are 50-51%.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of brain power to realize that if you exclude 50% of your population from contributing to economic development, you're not going to reach very far. So it will take you twice the amount of time. You need to include. The reason women have been excluded in many parts of the world are because of cultural reasons, social reasons, which need to be overcome. And they are being overcome in many countries. Also worked in a place called Tajikistan. So empowering women is one part of it. So it has to work both ways. It's just like when a bank is ready to lend to SMEs, but the SMEs don't know that the bank is ready. Because the bank will get clients from the SMEs. So you need to. Similarly, women need to be educated, and now they are able to access funding from a bank, and bank need to be sensitized. There's several ways. I mean, I don't think I can go into detail, but some of the things like we did with HPL in Pakistan, is sensitizing the staff. Because at the end of the day, male, female are different in a lot of things.
In a lot of things.
Physically. So the way you relate to them, again, in let's say selling a financial product, very different. This again is part of our capacity building when we work with a bank, and we call it banking on women is the product we offer.
It's a product.
Meaning in the World Bank Group, build a capacity within financial institutions to bank women. One of them is how do you relate to a woman? How do you sell a product? And it's very different from how you would do it to a male. If a woman comes in and wants a line of credit, for example, and a male comes in, the way the credit officer in the bank speaks to a male has to be very different. The male is looking, he's shopping around for the rate of interest. So if you're okay, you can give me a line of credit 15%. No, the next bank is giving you 30%. You'll shop around. I'm just giving you one example. I mean, there are a lot of examples, and these are things which have to be changed. And this is what we do when we work with a bank to create a woman in banking, a value proposition within a bank. And we did it in HPL. A woman will go in, and if they ask for a line of credit, I mean, they're not just asking for a line of credit. They also are thinking about, now, will this line of credit give me enough money so I can send my two kids to school? This line of credit give me enough money that when I'm planning my household budget for the next month, when I run out of money. So that is on their mind. The way the project is sold to a woman buyer of that financial product by an employee of the bank, has to be different. It's different level. So yes, I agree. The women have been excluded from financial system, but the scenario today is much better than it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And there are, but it doesn't come. It doesn't come naturally. Banks have to work towards creating an ability and a capacity within the systems themselves and within the people themselves. Of how do you address or relate or understand the need of a female client as against a male client? And these are very different. I mean, I can go into detail, but probably you need another program for that. We've done it across the board. And the program we call Women Banking on Women actually is what we call it. And now there are platforms, I think, globally, where HPL is now a member of that platform, where, like a lot of other platforms for SMEs and stuff like that, you can join and understand what is happening in different parts of the world. A very good example of where we work in Lebanon is a bank called DLC. It's a smaller bank than HPL, but they've implemented a woman product very successfully. And so has HPL for that. So yeah, I mean, this is an important part of our resources. Need to be empowered, and one of the ways to empower anyone is that they have a banking relationship. If they need to start a business, if they need a line of credit, they have a financial institution that they need to make a credible track record for that, and the time to start for that is now.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much, Kaiser, for giving us this important time of yours. This discussion has been really insightful and very informative. I hope our listener would love and adore your comments and your views, which are very, very comprehensive. I hope you enjoy this interview as well.
Thanks a lot. I think, thank you for the opportunity, first of all. But I think these messages need to resonate, frankly. I think this platform that you are now offering is exactly for this purpose. And I hope it makes a difference. Thanks a lot for thinking me worthy of contributing to this platform. And do let me know what impact it has had. I would really love to hear that from you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.